Maybe we can start with Sue.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sue Heffernan. I've been with the coalition just over a year, and I represent the parent sector.
Hi, I'm Tracy Capicelli. I'm from the Mental Health Association. I'm the director of our suicide prevention department.
Allison Barden, director.
Hi, Christine McIntyre, Director of Project Community Pride, and we're the youth serving sector. I'm Kathy Martini. I'm the HR and Risk Management Director at the Madison Area YMCA.
And I'm Rosella Clyde. I am a Chatham Borough activist.
I'm Leah Mignani, and I'm helping out with Project Community Pride and the Madison Chatham Coalition.
And I'm Kristen Perconti. I started as a new clinician last month with Project Community Pride.
Zoomers, meter, teamers.
Hi, I'm Diana Russo. I'm the SAC at Madison High School.
Anyone else want to say hello? All right. Okay. Thanks everyone for being here. We have a really exciting sector spotlight today. You met her briefly when she introduced herself. It's Tracy Capicelli from the Mental Health Association, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about teen suicide prevention. Yeah, it's relevant to all of the sectors. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. Let me share my screen.
Diana, can you see that screen?
I can't.
Let's try it.
Okay.
Oh,
I think it was.
just took a second.
There we go.
Got it.
So today we're going to be talking about, what we're seeing in youth, what warning signs to look for, how to start a conversation, and resources. But I want you to talk about mental health versus mental illness, because a lot of times they can be used interchangeably. And our mental health really has to do with our feelings, our thoughts, our actions, and it's really on a continuum. So depending on what's going on in our life, it could change. Last year around this time, I actually sprained my ankle 2 days before going to New Orleans. So my mental health wasn't great. And when we're talking about mental illness, it really affects every area of our life. When I was in high school, I was actually diagnosed with depression. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. Back then, we didn't really talk about mental health in school, mental illness in school. So it really affected every area of my life. I used to be a straight A student. I just started not caring about school. As soon as I came home, I isolated in my room, didn't talk to my friends, didn't talk to my parents. And everything seemed overwhelming to me. Getting up in the morning was overwhelming. Taking a shower was overwhelming. And I was angry all the time, not really sadness, but just angry. And if I wasn't angry, I felt nothing. So when something good happened, I didn't feel anything. And when something bad happened, I didn't feel anything. So it really affected every aspect of my life. So it's kind of the difference between mental health and mental illness. I wanted to show some statistics. So the New Jersey Office of the Medical Examiner has a dashboard that goes over suicide statistics. So if you look at the third statistic, there's been 27 suicides as of yesterday in New Jersey under the age of 25. And there's been 15 suicides in Morris County since the beginning of 2023. So even though New Jersey has one of the lowest suicide rates, one person dying by suicide is too many. In New Jersey, suicide is the third leading cause of death among our youth. And also, too, if you look on there, on average, there's 130 suicides per day in the United States. So it just goes to speak the importance of knowing the warning signs and having a conversation. I go into schools a lot talking about mental health to the younger grades and then talking about depression, suicide in middle school and high school. And it's so important to talk about it because kids are already talking about it. So to give them the right information and letting them know, hey, I'm talking about it, so feel free to talk about it with me. So here, every few years, there's a youth risk behavioral survey that's done by the CDC. And it's given to over 17,000 students actually fill this out all across the United States. And this was done in 2021, and the results just came out probably a month or two ago. What I find alarming is that almost half of high schoolers have felt hopelessness and sadness that have basically stopped them from doing the things that they enjoy, which is why I think education is so important, prevention is so important, listening is so important. The Mental Health Association, we just actually got funded through DCF, along with 14 other agencies to provide prevention and short-term counseling. We got the grant for Sussex and Morris, so we're hoping to reach more students and provide more assistance to them. 22% of high school students seriously considered suicide, and the LGBTQ female students really are at highest risk. Okay, so myths and facts. I think it's so important more to talk about language, to talk about the myths and facts, because the more we educate, the more we provide the proper information, the more likely we're able to reduce that stigma. So there's many risk factors, and I'm going to get to that in a few slides. But just like any physical illness, even if you have those risk factors, it doesn't mean that you're going to develop that physical illness. Same thing when we're talking about suicide as well. And suicide has many warning signs, many risk factors, other than just having a mental illness, either diagnosed or undiagnosed. And someone who is suicidal has more than just looking sad. They could be angry or agitated or anxious. And then one of the greatest myths that I see across the board is if we talk about it, then our children are going to die or attempt suicide. Greatest myth that's out there. And that's actually not true. I actually had my own struggles with suicide years ago. And I remember when I had a lot of physical problems that no one could figure out, doctor after doctor after doctor, like over 13 doctors I went to. No one could figure it out. And the last thing that happened to me was I had a seizure. And I never had a seizure before. The medicine I was on was horrible. Like I felt like I couldn't think, I couldn't function, like my brain didn't work. I couldn't drive. And as Allison knows, I live in Sussex County. So getting anywhere was hard. Uber wasn't really a thing back then. So it's not like I could Uber anywhere. And if I needed to, it would have gotten quite expensive. So I think at that point I hit my rock bottom. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I didn't want to tell my family because I felt like I was such a burden between my seizure and all these other physical illnesses or physical issues. So I remember my mom actually asked me, and it was such a relief to talk about something that was so scary to me. So that's why it's the greatest myth that I ever hear of. And another myth that we hear is if kids do talk about it, well, they're just being dramatic. It's just a cry for help. You know, we don't need to take that seriously. And it's like, well, if it is just a cry for help, why wouldn't we help someone who's looking for help?
Take out the just.
Right, exactly. So here are some of the risk factors that, individuals have. And again, just because you have those risk factors, it doesn't mean that you're going to attempt or die by suicide. And our youth specifically, when we're talking about mental health issues, ADHD is one of the top that we see when it comes to suicide because of that impulsivity. And I was actually at a training not too long ago, and the presenter said that from the moment someone makes a plan of how they're going to end their life, they usually attempt within 20 minutes. So that's why it's so important to reduce access to lethal means. And there isn't just, everyone, I work a lot with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and everyone wants to know, well, why? So when you hear someone die by suicide, you want to know why it happens. And there isn't just one cause. It's usually many risk factors that converge. I actually heard it described as if you take a rubber band and you start stretching it out, there's all these risk factors until you get to the last thing that happens, and then the rubber band just breaks. So I kind of love that analogy. But also on here, social isolation. In that youth risk behavior survey, they said connectiveness is so important, which it is. Just being connected to adults, connected to, friends, everything. And I was just reading an article about social media and how youth spend on average 7 hours a day on social media, and that youth, less than 40% of youth actually go out and hang out with their friends. So connectiveness is so important. Substance use, a lot of people use substances to, one, reduce inhibition, two, to kind of numb out the pain. Self-injury, it can be a risk factor, but just because someone self-injures, it doesn't mean that they're attempting to die by suicide. Bullying, loss. So trauma is one of the greatest risk factors for developing a mental health issue, and then a mental health issue is one of the greatest risk factors for dying by suicide. And then stigma, barriers to healthcare, huge. Therapists for youth are few and far between nowadays. And when we're talking about psychiatrists, forget it. There's some school districts that are amazing, that have the capacity to provide services. Like I know Chatham, amazing what they do there. Access to lethal means. And then when we're talking about suicide and the media, that's why I think it's so important to educate really everyone about what to look for and who to reach out to help if they're struggling.
I think also Chatham actually, Superintendent Lususa actually mentioned at a Board of Ed meeting that they're very concerned about mental health.
Yes.
So I think having the public acknowledgement of it is really, really important. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen to so many of these questioning children because of what's going on in Florida and Texas and all the publicity about that. That is scary to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Does someone say something? Okay. I'm just hearing that. But yes, absolutely. And we're definitely in a mental health crisis for youth, 1,000%. And we're seeing a lot of teacher burnout too. So I actually just wanted to do a presentation to teachers on teacher burnout at a school. And what came up, I created a survey. I know this is off topic, but connectiveness and having that coworker to talk to. So connectiveness and support is so important all around. So barriers to treatment. When I was diagnosed, before I was diagnosed with depression, I didn't know I had it. I knew something was wrong. So they might not recognize their symptoms as being a mental illness. fear what treatment might involve. They might feel like a burden. They don't want to disappoint their parents. They don't want to be hospitalized, and that they don't want to reach out for help because it makes them look weak is something that, I really try to enforce with students when I go into schools, that it takes a really strong person to reach out for help when you're struggling. Some kids might think, or some youth might think that their parents won't understand, which is true. I've been in schools where I have been in the guidance waiting rooms, and there was a mom that came in to pick up her child who needed to go get screened at St. Clair's. And the mom said, I can't believe I had to leave work for this. So, there is unfortunately, there's some adults who, aren't easy to talk to about mental health and mental illness. And then limited access to resources. I work, so particularly there's a school in Sussex County that I'm thinking of that, there's many students in there that would benefit from therapy, but their parents can't afford it, or they come from a single family household and their parent works 2 jobs, or they only have 1 car, or that car is unreliable and sometimes it breaks down. So there's lots of barriers to treatment. And then protective factors. Actually, having one trusted adult is one of the most important protective factors in our youth. So when I go into schools, we always talk about, well, who's your trusted adult, to kind of get them thinking of who they have for support. And again, there's that connectiveness piece. Again, feeling connected to family, community, being able to problem solve. And when we go into schools, we talk about coping. So, okay, what do you do to cope? So it's really about building resiliency so kids can handle those ups and downs in life. Here's what I was just saying, most significant protective factor. And then it's about building coping skills and finding what the youth does when they're feeling sad or stressed out or really angry, that makes them feel better. And it should be about the youth, not about us. If someone said to me, oh, you should start running helped me. I'm not a runner. I wish I was a runner. Like, I've tried 3 different running apps, and I've come to the conclusion that just like I don't like salmon, I don't like to run. So it's important to ask the youth what works for them. And trusted adults, having that conversation, who you could go to. And you might go to some adults for one thing and other adults for others, but it's just important to start that conversation about trusted adults. So this is a program, and I actually brought the book with me, that we provide to 3rd and 4th graders. It's called Gizmo for Mental Health. And every student actually leaves with a book. And we talk to them about what mental health is, what do you do to cope? Well, if those things don't work, those things that normally make you feel better stop helping, then we want to tell a trusted adult. We go through a trusted adult. We say, okay, sometimes it's scary to talk to adults. Here's some ways that you could go talk to an adult. And it's great because they could bring this home, continue the conversation at home about mental health. And again, it's about building that resiliency at a young age. And it's so cute. I mean, who doesn't like dogs? So warning signs. And I always think I love this slide because so many typical adolescent behavior. Am I totally going over time?
No.
Okay.
You're
So some typical adolescent behavior could look like warning signs of suicide and vice versa. So that's why I love this slide. So typical adolescent behavior, wanting to spend all their time with friends. Warning signs, withdrawing from friends. We could all remember that age when all we wanted to do was hang out with our friends. I thought my parents were so uncool. I didn't want to even hear them speak because I felt like it was cringeworthy. So occasionally losing temper when things don't go their way, and then warning signs, frequently arguing with adults, breaking rules. So like if a youth all of a sudden starts getting into fights at school, getting detentions a lot. And what I think is so important is I think that we need to focus on why the behavior is happening, not the actual behavior. So if you see a change in behavior, it's important to have that conversation. Okay, well, why? Why is this happening? So moving from childhood likes to teen pursuits, potential warning signs, losing interest in favorite activities. So if a youth stops, playing lacrosse and quits the team, that could be a warning sign that something else is going on. So sometimes struggling to complete undesired tasks, adolescent behavior, potential warning sign, difficulty remaining focused, maintaining concentration. And that could be for various reasons. Like when I had depression, I have depression, I couldn't focus in school because I felt like I couldn't, it took all my energy, like I said, to get out of bed. So all that energy was used just to get up. I didn't even have like the bandwidth to focus on anything else. So here's some other warning signs. I think one of the most important takeaways is that change in behavior. If you see a constant change in behavior. And we all know that our moods vary. And we all know, especially when we're talking about youth, their moods vary, I would say, more than adults, maybe. But if you see a consistent change in behavior, and then if they're giving away prized possessions, if they're eating too much, not eating at all, if they're sleeping too much or not sleeping. So if you notice, bags under someone's eyes, like a youth's eyes, or if they're sleeping in class, or if you notice a significant amount of weight gained in a short amount of time or lost in a short amount of time, and then the increased use in substances, and then anxiety and worry, poor hygiene, and again, this is consistent, feeling trapped, and then bored with school, work, etc. Like I said, when I had depression, I couldn't care less. Like, didn't care about school, didn't care about anything. And again, it's because it took me so much energy to do everything. So common risks, common sayings. So I just want to sleep and never wake up, or I want to sleep forever. For me, I didn't say I wanted to kill myself. I said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. So we need to be mindful that I want to kill myself doesn't necessarily have to sound exactly like that. So these are the things we want to do. Again, remember those myths. So we don't want to think that the youth is dramatic or looking for attention. We want to ask open-ended questions and really listen. And I always say that listening is one of the greatest gifts we could give anyone, adult, a youth, because we're so busy and we're always doing 1,000 things. So to really sit and listen to someone, especially listening non-judgmentally, especially when we're talking to youth, allows them to feel heard, acknowledged, and really understood, and be available. Say, oh, you don't want to talk right now, that's okay. I'm here for you. Come and talk to me whenever you want. I'm here to support you. You're not alone. Asking about,
Also, your picture there of the touching in a very caring way.
Yes.
Even if you can't say something, if you feel that's connection. And I think that sometimes that hug, that touch says much more than, words.
Yeah.
It's not, because you can't really put it into, you can't really verbalize what it is, but you can feel when somebody's hugging you.
Absolutely. And sometimes people might not know what to say. So, giving them a hug or holding their hand or patting them on the shoulder, that's their way of showing that they care and that they're there to support you. So asking the question, when I first started in the field many years ago, we used to say, are you thinking about harming yourself? And we actually stay clear of that now, because harming yourself could mean a bunch of different things. So if we're concerned about suicide, we have to ask the question directly. And here's some other ideas. Do you wish you were dead? Sometimes I say, sometimes people who go through similar things that you've been going through think about taking their own life. Is that something that you've been thinking about? So but we want to be direct. We don't want to minimize the situation, and we don't want to be afraid to ask. So if I say the example I just gave, it's very different than if I said, so, you're not really thinking about killing yourself, are you? Totally different than offering support, listening non-judgmentally. It's like you're almost saying that person has to say no. Because it's like, well, yeah. Right, exactly. We don't want to ignore your limitations. So when I go into schools and I talk to students, I say to them, it's not your job to make your friend not depressed or not suicidal. It's just to recognize and get them help. And I think, a lot of times we aren't trying to be inconsiderate. When I had my seizure, my friend said to me, well, things could be worse. And she was my best friend in life. She was trying to be helpful, but I was like, I mean, definitely. But, for me in that situation, it was so difficult. But again, she wasn't trying to be mean. She was trying to be supportive. So don't worry, everything will be all right. Cheer up. You have so much to be thankful for. Think about how your family would feel if you killed yourself.
Those are guilt trips.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people have this severe tunnel vision. And there's this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. So they think, well, my family would be better off without me. Because if you take a second and you think, I don't know if anyone's ever had surgery or been in a lot of physical pain, but if you could think back to either when maybe you felt hopeless, or maybe you felt helpless, or maybe you were in this intense physical pain, you couldn't think clearly. So when someone's feeling suicidal, they have this overwhelming feeling of pain, emotional pain, hopelessness, and helplessness. So we're not going to show this video.
We can try.
Okay.
I have my ups and downs, just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
What if
I can be hard to figure out.
I don't.
Yeah. Are your computer's muted?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually. Yeah,
We can double listen to it. If you play it and we hear it, yeah, you can get through the.
it's okay.
Why aren't you looking over my shoulder all the time?
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual,
Acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason.
or getting really mad, not able to sleep, or sleeping too much,
Shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away.
acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late,
Suddenly not doing stuff he used to love.
or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed, not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself.
It happens. More than you think. More than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said
I
something.
wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, they want somebody to ask.
They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like, you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing herself is to ask. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes,
Well, here's what you don't say.
That's crazy.
Don't be such a drama
you're
queen.
making too much of this.
That boy's not worth killing yourself over. It's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention.
You're not going to kill yourself.
What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad. How can I help? We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
A lot of people think about killing themselves, adults and kids.
Most of them never try it, but some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead. I can't live with this.
I'm gonna kill myself,
Take her seriously. Find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure.
But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself. Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
but don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts. Make a list together. Write them. 3, 4, 5 names.
Put the suicide hotline number on there too.
Have him keep that list in his wallet so he always knows where to turn.
Make sure your home is safe.
If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. The bullets, too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to.
We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask.
Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut.
Because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference.
All the difference.
In your kid's life.
This is one of my favorite quotes ever because, like I said, listening is so important. So when we listen, we hear someone into existence. So I always try to add it to the end of my presentation because I think it's so important to mention that we need to listen more, talk less. So this is one of the programs that I bring into schools. It's for middle school and high schoolers, and it's an evidence-based program that takes place over one class period, and it goes over the signs of depression, the warning signs of suicide, how to start a conversation with a friend, and then who to tell as far as a trusted adult. Because I like it because it gives students a blueprint of what to say and then who to tell. Because a lot of times, you say, well, I want to ask, but then what? What do I do after that? So I love this program. I've been doing it for 4 years. And I know you can't see it up there, but there's actually a questionnaire that goes along with the program. It's not mandatory, but it's 7 questions. It focuses on depression and suicide. And some of the questions are vague. It's like, have you had less energy lately? Do you feel like everyone's prettier, smarter than you? Which I feel like I could be like, yes, at 44. But it gives schools an opportunity to help kids that might be struggling that they're not aware of. So this is filled out prior to the program, then it's collected, and then the school counselors go through it to see if they have to meet with any students. And with 100% of the times, and again, I've been doing this 4 years, at every single school, that's been at least one student that the school's like, oh, I didn't know this kid was struggling, this student was struggling. And I think it's one of the good things about this questionnaire is it's really hard for people to reach out for help. It's hard to make that first step. It might be hard to go to guidance because you might not know what to say, like it's scary. So this is a way students can kind of reach out for help without making that first step themselves and it being anonymous, because they said guidance is the only ones that see this. Like I was just at a school yesterday, and there was a student in the 8th grade class that the guidance counselor wasn't aware of that answered yes to all the depression questions and both suicide questions, which the suicide question is, have you thought about suicide or have you ever made an attempt in your life? And they answered yes to all the questions. And then here is our suicide prevention website, which focuses on warning signs, how to start a conversation. It also has testimonials on there from individuals who have either lost someone to suicide or have attempted themselves. And I could email this to Allison so she could share it with you all. So it's great, and also has other resources on there as well.
Ask a question about the survey
course.
guidance.
Yeah.
What did they do when they had, so when the person got the response that the girl had answered yes to everything?
Yeah.
Did they reach out to the student?
Yeah.
Or to the parents? Or?
Yeah, so the first step, they reach out to their student, and then depending on, you know, obviously the outcome of what they talk about depends on what they do next. Yeah. So here's some youth resources. So the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline used to be the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Now you just have to dial 988 from your phone, so you don't have to remember that whole long number. Youth and adults can utilize this line, and you don't have to be suicidal. If you're concerned about a family member or friend, you could call them and be like, hey, this is what's going on. What do you suggest that I do? Second floor is for youth. They could call or text that number. It's the service out of New Jersey. The Trevor Lifeline is for youth in the LGBTQ+ community. The 1-866 numbers for someone in crisis. The text numbers if they just want support. Crisis text line, adults or youth. You know, if you're having a bad day, you want someone to vent to, you could just text them. So they're a great resource as well. And then here's our teen line. So the MHA started a teen line a few months ago. It's run by youth for youth. So the line's for 13 to 24-year-olds. It's run by 18 to 24-year-olds. So it gives youth an opportunity to talk to another young person. It's open 5 to 10, Monday through Friday. And there's a call-in or a text-in option. And it's a non-crisis line, but it's anyone who needs support. So if you actually scan that QR code, you could save it directly to your phone. But I've been wanting to start this line for the last 3 years because there's so few and far between in the country. There's only about a handful that are run by youth for youth. And again, I feel like, you know, that's another reason why I love going into schools, because I feel like youth are the most underutilized resource when it comes to suicide prevention. And youth are more likely to talk to another young person than to an adult because of that. While they're just being dramatic, they don't understand. So this is our most recent. And then here's some other teen lines. The first one, the Text Teen, is out of California. You could actually call or text. Their line is operated by younger people. So they're actually in high school, the people that operate their line. And they go through a year-long training to work on that line. Our youth go through a training, obviously. We don't just throw them on the line. We're not like, I got it. So they are trained in youth mental health first aid, which is a national, I just apologize, that's my work phone. That's a national certification. So it goes over how to assess someone for suicide, how to listen non-judgmentally, how to give really reassurance and hope. We provide them with resources, and then we also give them other training. So we're actually working with EDGE to give them a training on how to support an LGBTQ+ youth. We've had someone talk about substance use, bullying, non-suicidal self-injury. So there's a lot of components that go into the training. And then we have monthly meetings, you know, to talk about what's going on the line. We do a lot of mock texting. So when before someone's hired, we do kind of mock conversations. And then once they are hired, we still continue that, because I feel like, you know, even as adults, it's always good to learn new skills and to, I don't know what I was going to say, but to learn new skills and to, to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
So do you debrief with these kids about things that they've heard?
Yes. So our texting software, we could actually read the calls between the callers and the workers. And then if there's any issues while they're working, they could call us, because someone is always on call to them. So they could call us and we could actually take over the conversation. The youth won't know that someone else took over. It'll still be coming through as the texting person, but we could actually take over the conversation. Yeah.
If it escalates or something.
Yeah. I love the software. So that teen line, I actually, before I started our line, picked the executive director's brain. I talked to her a million times, and she said if she was to redo the line, that she would use the software that we actually purchased. So it's good to know. Oh, and then there's my contact info. Now they spoke for 45 minutes instead of 20.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Can you take questions?
Of course.
I have so many thoughts, and I think you really put this in a context that we really need in this group, because we are focused on environmental efforts. And you pointed out so well that it's so hard for people to, especially teens, to come out and say like, hey, I need help, or where to go, or how it's going to be perceived, or if they're going to be bothering their mother at work. So there's a lot of barriers. And, when we talked about the ACEs in this group, we were talking a lot about like, so what can we do as non-family members, somebody who is maybe that available adult?
Yeah.
What are we looking for? Because, one of the, I came across a quote recently, and I think it just answers so much of, kind of work I do and work that affects so many of the issues that we're talking about. And it's, you've had one trauma, and it's a departure from who you really are.
Yeah.
And it's constant with the social media, which you brought up, and it's being reinforced all the time. And it's the opposite of what you are saying we actually need to do, which is connect. And you can't, if you don't know who you are, what are you connecting? How are you connecting? So it's pervasive. And I think that it has to be the community that answers this, because, yes, people say mental health, but, I don't really see, the state's removing money from mental health and substance use in many areas. Insurance companies are pulling back, they're not covering things. People aren't available. The licensing boards of clinicians are dragging their feet. So it's like, that's not really, no one's really putting their money where their mouth is. So we really have to be available and educated and having these conversations. Even clinicians being trained in the Columbia scale, which is like suicide prevention scale, practice. Do you feel like killing yourself? Do you think about it? Because it's language that we all need to keep hearing and get used to saying, or else it will continue to be stigmatized. And, when you said the relief, that's what people want, to say, I see you, so if there is an opportunity for people to have this awareness and have a resource, or say, hey, I see this kid struggling. I don't really know how to step in. What can I do? It's such a valuable thing. So do you have, just for regular people, not related necessarily to the child, or see, as a teacher, or, I'm even hearing teachers saying there's no time for the social emotional learning. We want to do it, but we can't. There's not enough time of the day. The curriculum is like cranking out. So it's really, there's so much opportunity for people who are so inclined and tuned in to step in if they can. What do you have thoughts about?
So,
additional thoughts, you offered many.
Like in schools, I would say guidance counselors, SACs, school psychologists. If it's something, let's say at the Y, it's just talking to the youth, offering support. If you have to get in touch with a family member, I think that's, if you feel like it's necessary, then that's something you could do. You could also refer them to any of these lines too for support if they're not suicidal. It's just offering as much support anywhere you could give it that I think is important.
Yeah. And maybe even thinking about other ways to connect with your own identity, because people are really moving away from who they are and don't really know, like, you know, I need to be this on social media. I need to be, yeah. So thank you so much. This is exactly, you know, I think what people need to talk about.
And I was actually talking to a father who lost his son a few days before his 13th birthday. And he said that he never spoke about mental health. He never spoke about suicide. And that's when he said, everyone's talking about it. So by us not talking about it, we perpetuate that stigma behind it because we aren't talking about it.
Well, I wanted to get to that because when you mentioned the parent who said, I don't have time for this, you know, to bring the child to get help, they didn't teach any of this in 1980s. So I feel like that's the huge gap is the parents and the kids are, it's great. I think the 3rd, 4th grade program, that's amazing. It's good that the kids are all learning this, but then you still have the parents who are back in whatever decade, not really getting it.
Yeah.
And so it's like a huge, I think parents are a huge barrier.
I know.
So I keep trying to think, how do we educate and train the parents as you're doing all this stuff?
And what's sad is, so we do provide parent education trainings, but the parents that really need it don't come.
They're too busy at work.
They're like, well, I don't want to come because then they're going to think my child,
Yeah.
right.
And we feel like the word place needs to adopt some of those.
Yeah.
Different offices.
I will, that's
Because then you're away from
idea.
your community where you say another parent's going to see.
Right.
it.
Yeah. Oh, why
Yeah.
is this parent on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea to encourage workplaces.
Yeah.
to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we did a presentation for BASF. And it was like nationwide people were able to join, which is nice. But I think you're right, like getting into organizations would be a really good idea because then it's less stigmatizing. Yeah.
And the whole thing's at night for parents to come to and then they're too tired after work.
Right. Or they're getting to score.
They're just choir.
Right. They already know it. Right.
Tracy, a question that came in from Bill Lilith from Partnership for a Drug Free New Jersey. It says, very engaging presentation. Thanks. For me, the best and most realistic movie about suicide and a good book is Ordinary People. Is the movie or book utilized? What is
I never heard of that.
Ordinary People.
Yeah.
It's about Mary Tyler Moore. I don't know if they loses the brother's suicide. So what's the book utilized to raise awareness or teach about this issue? What other books or media might you recommend?
Oh, there's actually, and I can't remember the name, so I'm going to pull it up now.
Can I say something? Boy Interrupted.
Yes.
The documentary. Have you seen that? Have you seen that? Oh my gosh, very realistic. 2 filmmakers are married and had a son. I think they're documentary filmmakers actually. And their son struggled with depression from when he was like 6 years old, 7 years old. So that's fantastic. That's an HBO documentary, Boy Interrupted. I recommend that. Really good.
Oh, look at that. Some fancy teams. So this gentleman, Lucas Wolf, he is on our Stop Teen Suicide website. He wrote this book, My Perfect Life, and I know they're bringing it into a lot of schools.
There's also a movie, it's not teen related, but it's called Ninth Mother. Have anyone seen that? No. I'm taking myself big time today. It's with Sissy Spacek.
Oh, really?
There was a movie I used back in the 80s, and I can't remember the name of it now, but I taught high school social studies, but I taught civil law. And so I did a suicide unit every year because I talked about how the law handles death. And so we looked at homicide, murder, and homicide and manslaughter, and then we looked at suicide. And there was this movie that was, and I can still hear the music and see it, but I can't remember the name of it. But I used it for at least 10, 15 years.
Wow.
And because I taught that program from the 80s, 90s to 2000s before. And I had it on my computer, so I didn't have to know the name of it. But I think, everything that you said, when I would do this unit in my civil law, and I would spend a week on it, I would let the counselors know in advance. And the other real thing, kids came forward and talked about it. And I think sometimes what you need is that kind of trigger that opens the door. It's not, I'm not talking about you, we're talking about what happened in this movie. And then you compare what's going on. You start thinking about what's going on in your life.
Right.
And I think that is, we always had kids coming to the counselors and talking things out. And I just thought that was such a, I felt that was part of my mission as being a teacher.
That's great, because I feel like some teachers don't feel that way.
Yeah, a lot of teachers don't feel that way. And a lot of parents, that's the other really big thing when I said about, I'm so concerned about our questioning children right now with the national narrative being so negative and so anti being who you are. It's not just anti-gay, it's being who we think you should be. And that is just blaring across the media so much that, in COVID, just the whole COVID lockdown, when you were talking about depression, I was thinking about what happened to my husband and myself in the fall of 2021. We were in a state of depression. And we recognized what was going on here and did things about it. But it's one of those things that builds up on you, overwhelming, and it's an outside situation. You could not go out. You were afraid to go out. And I think that hurt a lot of kids too, particularly with the schools being closed down. Education is important, but schools are an important place for socialization.
Absolutely.
And for growth. And when you cut that off, particularly if you put them into a home that's make them stay in an abusive home.
And then when you have those kids that were obviously affected by COVID, but then lost someone too. So there's that extra layer of trauma.
Yeah. But I think also another thing I just wanted to flip the point that many kids self-medicate and using controlled substances are there, and they are an alternative to suicide. They're just a slow death. And we don't seem to think about that because as a culture, it's just out there in the media how this is cool to drink. And you look at everything that's posted on Facebook. It's encouraged. And I think the whole idea, one of the things I try to do when people post pictures on Facebook, I don't say how pretty you are. I say, what an interesting smile you have. Or something like that, because I think that we have so much in our popular culture about having a perfect body and being the raving beauty and stuff like that. That you have to counter that narrative,
right?
In multiple ways.
Absolutely.
Can I ask, what kind of resources or education do you have for medical community? Because I know, social worker therapists, they're very much trained in it. But
so I actually went and did a training to the Morris County Family Health Center, right by King Supermarket there. And we actually came up with a questionnaire to have individuals who were there for HIV testing fill out prior to getting tested, to see kind of like what risk factors they already have that could lead someone to attempt or die by suicide if they get a positive result. So that's been helpful. But, I've also provided just regular suicide prevention training to them as well. And really what I wanted to get into is the Atlantic Health Pediatric Hub, which would be amazing. But it's very difficult to get in there because they only have a certain amount of time dedicated for training. And it has to be quick, short, and to the point. And a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want more work to do because we only have a certain amount of time with patients due to insurance and everything else. So it's so hard on numerous fronts.
How would it be more work if it's just education, if you're learning to ask the question?
Because it's, okay, so it's more time to ask the question, for the doctor to ask the question. Then what happens if the child is like, yes, I'm suicidal? So then that takes even longer time, because then you have to ask additional questions. So that's what, and listen, not everyone's like this. Not every doctor's like this. Not every teacher, just some. That's what I hear from some doctors.
Do you mean like the HQ2, the two questions?
Yeah.
So like, I know they do it in pediatrician's office, they do the 2 questions. And I've heard it various times. It's like, you know, are you thinking of hurting yourself? No?
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you were not going to tell them.
Yeah.
And it's not that, you know, I think I don't know if, you know, I'm sure it's various reasons, but I think it really boils down to the discomfort of saying it, like, please don't say yes. I don't want you know, you look fine, right? Your mom looked nice, you know, like, it's scary. And I think we have to, you know, acknowledge that. I love that you tell the students, like, it's not your job to make them better. I think that's so important, because I think that's what people are most afraid of. Like, now what do I do? It's like, you just handed me a hot potato. What am I going to do with this?
Right.
And that's not true. To make sure that people, like, there is a, you know, and I think, you know, I would feel like that too. Like, oh no, but in a different way. You know, it's just something that sometimes it feels like the ultimate worst thing, right?
Right.
So we don't want to avoid.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But the pediatrician, the ones that my kids go to, they actually just fill out a paper, which I think
the
is better,
depression
because they
one.
can write whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe that's easier for both the kid and the pediatrician. I don't know if that helps with anything, but sometimes maybe that's easier than the 2 questions. I don't know if that would work for them.
I know, like, my doctor, whenever I go.
It's a screen, you know, it's like a face screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even my doctor asked, do you feel depressed? Do you feel suicidal? And you're right. It's like, they're just like going down a list. And I'm like, no. But like, would I ever say anything if I was, when it's just a list? Another question down like the list.
Even I'm thinking about like your first postpartum appointment after like your 6-week appointment, and the questions are like, and are you anxious? Well, of course. There's something wrong if I'm not. So yeah, but like you feel like, oh, I don't want to answer. I don't want to like flag anything. I want to get in so I can get out and feed my baby when I get home. You know, so there's flaws, habits.
So what you're basically saying is that the medical community is not the best place to determine risk factors. It has to be other more subtle places. Or how to do it differently.
Yeah.
I disagree.
I think that they should be, you know, it's a regular, but I mean, ultimately, like, I think it's just expanding and can grow.
Yes.
You know, maybe people could get better. Some people are probably really, really like, I feel like, we don't know everybody. It depends on the time, you know. I mean,
I think you're right. A medical person can handle it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I because I'm a dentist, right? That's my lens, but we have an hour with the patient, right? So a hygienist has 40 minutes to an hour of having a conversation. You're building that relationship every 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So that to me is a better spot. An orthodontist like this, somebody who's seeing you regularly, and now you're coming in, not looking like you're interested in anything. Easier to have that conversation because you built it, and we're not part of, you know, a big health system that has 5 minutes and you got to get your patient in and out.
Right.
I think to say the whole medical community is a challenge. I
don't think so either.
I think you have to find pockets of providers who are, number one, interested.
Yes.
So maybe that's where you start, like a survey in the area of, hey providers, would you be interested in attending this type of seminar if we offer it?
Yeah.
If they are, great, and if not, then they're not your people.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Find people.
There's like the idea of the trusted adult. Like when I was going through the teen mental health first aid trainer, you're having kids actually write who are there, a list of trusted adults. A dentist or a hygienist or somebody that you are seeing multiple times a year, for somebody that could be a trusted adult.
Absolutely.
So isn't it our responsibility to make sure that as many people have access to the training and like the model as sensitive, as possible. So, yeah.
Interesting sounds there.
And that's like one of the trusted adults in the book too, your doctor, someone,
I'm so sorry. I didn't want to interrupt.
so like you were saying, anyone could be a trusted adult that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so
Carpool
much.
drivers.
Yeah. We, Tracy is going to be presenting at our Teen Topics in June. It's doing the SOS.
Yes,
June 21st. June 21st. Yeah. So we're looking forward to that, and hopefully there's an opportunity with additional youth here at the Y that we can identify and then bring this training to as well.
Absolutely.
So, I'll make sure to share Tracy's contact information with everyone as well. But thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just go right into it. Yes. Okay, I will spend just a couple of minutes on some updates, and then we'll do sector updates from anyone that wants to share, and then we'll be done. So a lot of upcoming events. We're in that time of year where there's just a lot going on, end of school year. I'm excited about our big Take Back event next week at Madison High School with Madison PD. That will be outside, Ken Shannon and I will be outside Madison High School at 7:30 next Wednesday morning for a day of service as well. So we'll be there with the Take Back table, giving out resources, giveaways, fun stuff. And then from there, we will move inside to give out our project graduation bags, which I have here. Leah will be stuffing these bags for Madison High School. I don't know where. So I'll pass this around, but just to show everyone what's inside quickly, we have the 988 card from Tracy, and then also the Team Connect information business card size. We have the MCC refusal skills card, warning signs of alcohol overdose, and then dangers of binge drinking, 50 things you should know about stress from Project Community Pride. So all of these will be in the bag and going to Madison High School seniors as they come out of their assembly with the principal. And then that afternoon, we will be part of the wellness fair for students. So a full day, really looking forward to that next Wednesday, yeah. We did the same bag for Chatham High School. Chatham High School seniors received, the PTO received their bags last week. So there's 220 seniors, I think, at Madison High School, 339 at Chatham. So a great opportunity for MCC to just get a ton of resources out to seniors as they graduate, really as they enter into this risky time for potential risky behaviors the last couple of weeks of school. So excited about that. Fishwack is coming up June 10th, 10 a.m. Oh, I didn't put an end time. 4 p.m. is the end time for Fishwack. We will have a table. We'll be next to the Y as usual. This year, our focus is going to be mental health. And we have our, which I don't have in front of me, we have our Mindfulness Matters coloring sheets that we created with Project Community Pride at the beginning of this school year. So the left side is a coloring sheet. The right side of it's an 8.5 by 11. The right hand side. Oh, thank you. So this is our coloring sheet. We updated it for summer colors. We're getting those printed this week. The right hand side is breathing exercises, grounding exercises. We also had a little coloring box. Coloring box with a little branded with MCC branding on it. phrase is doodle for your noodle. So we have those in hand already. So that's really going to be our push for this year for our table. We're looking for volunteers. We have a doodle sign up in the newsletter. So if you're able to give any time at all, please sign up for a shift. We're also promoting to Madison and Chatham High School, Chatham High School Key Club as well. So hopefully we'll get some volunteers that way. What else?
So how many kids do you have now in the teen task force?
7. Yeah, I'll actually have a video to play for the teen task force. I will try and do that in a second. What else? Teen mental health first aid. So I completed the last component of the teen mental health first aid training. We are hopeful that we can start rolling that out fairly soon. A lot of it goes, similar to SOS, really having the teen identify as, being able to identify their trusted adults. Really the messaging is, you're not providing care, you're not responsible for providing care for your friend or for yourself, but really getting them to that next level, triaging, getting to the next person. So excited about that. Library of the Chathams. So I think I talked about this at our last meeting. We are working very closely with Library of the Chathams, Elise and I. We currently have a display right when you walk in for Mental Health Awareness Month. It's on the bookshelf right when you walk in. The Teen Task Force created a poster, a digital poster, and the librarian also pulled some books related to mental health that are on display as well. We also created, I'll pass these around, some bookmarks. Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome.
Which I know the text is small, but we had a lot that we wanted to fit on there. So we're dropping these off today. The bookmarks will be handed out to people as they check books out. Has MCC information on the back, ways to get involved, and then some mindfulness tips as well. So I think I ordered like 1,000 of those. So if anyone wants any at schools or anything like that, let me know. We have plenty to go around. What else? Draw the line. So we talked about our Draw the Line campaign at our last meeting. Christine and I met with law enforcement last week, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, they are interested in participating and helping us to identify 2 liquor stores. I think we've identified one in Madison, and Chatham is thinking about which location in Chatham. But we should be able to, we're going to order those materials in the next week and launch that campaign most likely for July 4th. So excited about that as well. Student survey. Things have been moving quickly in Madison. It looks like we will be able to survey middle school and high school students before the end of the school year. The last time we surveyed Madison middle school and high school students was January of 2019. So we're overdue to collect Madison's data, but it looks like we will be able to survey on the 4 core measures. We'll be asking about 30-day past use, perception of risk and harm, perception of parental disapproval, and perception of peer disapproval for alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, prescription drugs, and vaping. So it'll be really good. Those are the 4 core measures that we're required to collect and then report to the CDC as a requirement of the grant. So we're not adding in the additional questions that the schools have wanted to include in the past. And that's fine with us. It's nice to have the other data, but we need the 4 core measures. So it also makes the survey process less cumbersome for teachers and for the administration. So we're hopeful. We're very hopeful by the end of this school year that we will we'll get some data back. So that is that. What else? There's something else. I'll try and play. I'm not going to try and play the video. I'll include it in the. I'll include Elise. No, it's Emma Hartnett did the Teen Task Force update video for this month. Teen Task Force podcast is going to be released Friday of next week. So excited about that. We've talked about it for a while. It's a lot of really good content related to college and anxiety and kind of what they all have been dealing with for the past 2-3 years. So we'll start promoting it the middle of this week, but it'll be released on Friday of next week. So we're really excited about that. And I think that is all that I have.
This is really cute. I think that even though it's small, if you're young and have young eyes, it's not. You get a whole lot of information together in a very small space, and as a bookmark, it's something maybe used. Like the idea.
Team task force idea. They're so great. That's why we have them. They're so good.
I need a whole bunch.
Yeah. Language, yeah.
So did you put these in the library display?
They haven't. I just got them in yesterday. So
that'd be a nice thing because you're picking up books.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's what we created it for. So we'll give a large stack to, like, obviously, you know, books. Yeah, physical books are being used there. So, but yeah, we have a ton. So if anyone wants any additional, we can give those out. We'll have them at Fishwack too, probably.
Bring to Harvard.
Oh, great. Yeah. Perfect. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing. The prom card. So we did this last year. This is our Celebrate Safely card. So I'll pass it around. This is last year, so it's 2022 information on it. But it includes refusal skills on one side. It includes the signs of alcohol poisoning, and then information about the Overdose Prevention Act. And then on the back, it has substance-free alternatives for prom weekend. And then Coalition Teen Task Force information on the back as well. So we did that in Chatham last year. Madison, it kind of was a little bit too late in the game to get those distributed, but this year we will have those. We just sent them to print yesterday, so we updated colors obviously for Madison High School. So we will give those to Heather and Diana for prom for both schools. So happy to have representation in both districts this year. Okay, that's all I have. We can move into sector updates now. So schools, if you guys have anything that you want to share.
Yeah, I think, you know, everything you mentioned, I'm very excited for. We have our vape take back, we have our wellness fair. I'm definitely excited to see, like you said, the prom favors and the giveaway bags, since this is my first year in Madison. I'm like so excited to see everything in action and how it all turns out, and just glad to be distributing so many resources to the kids. But other than the events you mentioned, I think that was it. And then, you know, at our wellness fair, we have a bunch of different partners coming. I don't know if I mentioned last time that when we had Nick Lepper come to the meeting, I had contacted him afterwards to see if he can come to the wellness fair. And so now Edge will be there because he accepted. So that's very exciting as well.
Yeah, that's great. He's great too.
Yeah, yeah.
Good guy,
I'm
the
definitely
young kids.
excited.
Yeah, at Chatham, we are doing like a series of mental health events in the R&R room throughout the month of May. I had my first wellness fair in October, so we decided to kind of do it a little bit differently in May. Christine and Leah came from PCP the other day, and it was great. We had mindfulness activities, stress reduction, breathing strategies, fidgets, and it was well attended. Allison tried to come one day, and the minute she walked through the doors, we lost power, and all of the students were stuck in the cafeteria. So we rescheduled. She's going to come back on the 31st, I believe, and hopefully we don't lose power that day so that she can give us all of her resources and the intoxication goggles and all of that stuff. I think the students will gain a lot from that. Aside from that, obviously things are starting to wind down for the school year. I advise a mental health awareness club that some students just started this year. And I just put out an application for leadership positions for next year. I'm hoping to restructure that a little bit with some students who maybe are a little bit more dedicated, spreading out the leadership responsibilities so then we can do even more activities next year. But we did host a big yoga fundraiser a couple weeks ago, and that was well attended. We raised a lot of money that we're going to be donating to two mental health organizations.
Great, thanks, Heather. Other sectors?
Sure. I just want to put a shout out to ask for your assistance. The Y is looking for staff in two particularly critical areas. Our summer camp is in need of camp counselors. So any help that you can assist with, the majority of our camp counselors have to be 18 and older, but we do hire some younger than 18. So, please consider if you wouldn't mind getting the word out. If you see, we have a lot of social media out. Please share that with your network. We really appreciate it. And another critical area is our Kirby Child Care Center, where we're in need of teachers, assistant teachers in our child care center, working with infants to preschool. So like I said, you'll see a lot out there on our social media. Please share that with your networks. We really appreciate it. Any help is great. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Project Community Pride, we have been extremely busy for May. It's mental health awareness, so we've been very busy. And I think Allison mentioned some of the things we're involved in with Madison Chatham Coalition. We did the May 3rd was the bagel brainstorming with the police. It's the second one we've done with them. Went really well. They want another one in the fall, so we'll be doing that again. Also, the Teen Topics, which we'll be doing June 21st. Tracy's going to be coming to that. And we're planning one for August as well. So July and August as well. So we're looking forward to that. And we have the, I know that the Take Back is during the Madison High School Community Service Day, but we'll be doing, we're taking about 10 students at our building. And I'll be having my new staff, which you met. Kristen Perconti is new staff clinician. And then we have Leah Magnani is our intern. We're going to all be working with the students and then go back to the high school for the fair at the end. So busy.
I don't know if I mentioned this in our last meeting or you did. Our Teen Topics, so we're just going to go straight through. We're not taking any.
We were going to take a break and now we're not.
Yeah, we're not going to. So the July Teen Topics is going to be somebody is going to be a speaker from JVWS.
Oh, yes.
Who's going to be talking about healthy relationships. She has a ton of fantastic programs. We want to keep middle school and high school separate for those presentations, I think. So she'll most likely come back again in the fall for a high school centered presentation. But the one in the summer is middle school, we said, right? Yeah. But she does a lot of there's cyberbullying, harassment, what a healthy relationship looks like. She has an extensive catalog. So we're starting with middle school only for July.
And actually with that one for the fall, we may ask one of the high schools to have us host, or we talked about maybe doing that off site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah,
think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Any other sector updates anybody wants to share?
So I'm just curious about the involvement with the police departments. I know that they're doing programs with you, but I haven't seen any representation in the meetings in quite a while.
Yeah, we haven't seen law enforcement at a meeting in a long time, but like you say, law enforcement sector is definitely one which we need something, I need something, I call them, and they're very responsive. They're very, they're kind of willing to do whatever we ask, like particularly the take back event. I feel like, especially with Madison PD, if we need something, like my contact is Kenny Shannon, he'll call a meeting with his staff right away and we'll get in and be able to get exactly what we need. I think the Chathams as well, I'd say our best relationship or our easiest relationship is with Madison. But I mean, we had this event last week or 2 weeks ago and they came there. And I think for us right now too, the school resource officers are a relationship that we haven't had in the past, MCC hasn't had, but they are like boots on the ground there. We should have been engaging them from the beginning. Yeah. So they are, they were able to give us some really good information about what they're seeing and also kind of what their barriers have been. That first meeting with Bagels and Brainstorming in November, that's kind of where the vape take back idea came from, hearing them talk about what their challenges were and lack of consequences and things like that. So, when I'm actually giving a presentation tomorrow night for a group, and I was thinking about the sectors that we have engaged and kind of like who stands out. And it's so funny because we don't see law enforcement here, but law enforcement is definitely law enforcement, schools, youth, parents, healthcare, like they stand out. They're like the top 5 on the list. We don't necessarily see people all the time, but we're still very engaged. So.
And my other question is with the faith-based
yeah, that's a different story. Yeah.
We're just not connecting.
Faith-based is hard. It's when we have this conference with CADCA twice a year, there are full sessions on the faith-based sector and how coalitions can work to better engage that sector. But I think it's the number one, the lowest engagement sector across the board. I don't know why. Well, I think that they're very busy, just like every other sector, but that's a struggle for us, for sure.
And then many of them just don't have a designated youth director.
Yep.
Yeah. But why does it have to be a youth director?
Doesn't have to be. We've had like pastors and other people. Particularly for us, for MCC, the issue, our meetings are on Tuesdays, and Mondays are a day that Sundays are very busy, so then they don't work on Mondays, and then Tuesday is their first day back in the office, 9:30 or at church or their place of worship, and that's the schedule piece has been difficult for pastors in particular.
Have you reached out to the faith-based area?
Yeah, we've done right before COVID, we presented at the Madison Interfaith I don't know what it's called, Madison Interfaith Council, I think.
So, yes.
Yeah. So there was a collection, but even that meeting, there weren't a lot of people that were able to attend. So we try and do that. We've done that in Chatham as well. They share a lot of the same leaders, but we haven't done it in a while. So we'll be working.
So do you have a database of each religious organization and a contact?
Yeah, at least.
I would say at least when you're trying to restructure your teen task force for the fall, that a communication out to each of the congregations saying, inviting them to select somebody and send them, so that it's not just school-based.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it instead of asking.
Instead of asking them to come, ask them to send a kid.
Yeah.
To that represents their community to the teen task force and see what you can get from that. Because I think it would be also very, very, so I don't know the whole range of different faiths in both boroughs, but I think it would be useful to.
I think there's something like 29 places of worship between Madison and Chatham, so it's a pretty significant number.
Yeah.
But Elise did, last summer, she compiled a list of all of those places of worship. Yeah, she did a spreadsheet, who the point of contact was, and there were a lot of blank spaces, a lot of turnover, I guess, with youth ministry or other positions as well. She did send out an email, just like here's who we are, here's what we're doing, and didn't get a great response, but it's definitely worth trying again in the summer. So I appreciate that suggestion though.
Am I being heard here in the meeting? It's Bill
Hi,
Lillis.
Bill. Yes, hey, Bill.
So always great to join this coalition. I learned so much. But on the issue of faith-based, so some recommendations. Find out which worship sites are having NA meetings, AA meetings. They're already in the game, and those ministers are a great source. And whenever you reach out, thank the leaders of faith-based organizations. So it is very often someone who has a substance abuse issue. The family member goes to a minister for assistance. And thirdly, before COVID, I know I did a presentation in Morristown when faith-based have that ritual. So many of them have moving from childhood to adulthood. So for the Jewish people, the bar mitzvah, the bat mitzvah, for the Catholic, the confirmation. So to me, that's a great opportunity where you can be a source of, in terms of a healthy self-concept and the data on kids involved in youth ministry, they're less likely to use. So again, thanking faith-based organizations for doing that. And then encouraging maybe in September, it's National Recovery Month. When's the last time you talked at the pulpit about substance abuse in a real and meaningful way? And you're there to help them. You can come back to me. I know there's some things that faith-based ministers do. And then let's acknowledge the reality for some in the faith-based organization getting over the idea that this is, the guilt, the shame of substance abuse. The reality is this is a moral problem, educating ministers who need to be turned over. So those are some thoughts. Happy to take an email or talk about that if you wanted to move forward on any of those things, but thanks.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bill. I definitely will follow up with you on that. I think you said something too, and I know we're at time. I just want to mention this one thing. When we, 5 years ago, when we secured the initial round of funding and I was starting to go around and just meet who we had engaged in the coalition, we had somebody from one of the churches in Chatham, and she had signed a sector representative, a CIA form, but she wasn't coming to meetings. And I just went in and kind of asked, what are you seeing? And what do you need? And she said that she is in a position, her congregation is fairly small, but because she is the leader of the congregation, she had parents that were coming to her, not knowing that other parents were going to her, looking for a whole host of resources, mental health, substance use, just a wide variety. And she just felt like people tend to confide in, in somebody in that position. And she just didn't have the time to even begin to start figuring out where to direct people. We were able to get her some resources, but I think that that's probably a very common theme for the faith-based sector. They're the trust for a lot of people, for adults, they're the other trusted adult that listens and has to listen, right? So I think that there certainly is more that we can be doing. And I love the idea of September in particular, especially with places of worship that host NA meetings. So thank you. Does anybody have anything else before we wrap it up? June meeting, I think, is the 20th. July meeting is towards the end of the month. If anybody, we don't have any speakers. We've had such a great lineup of speakers for the past several meetings. But if anybody is interested in any topics or thinks that, they'd like to learn more about anything in particular, summer's a great time to, for some groups to come in when things slow down a little bit. So let me know if there's anything that anyone is interested in hearing.
I think it'd be good to have an update on vaping and what's going on. I mean, particularly with some of these lawsuits that have Jewel in particular, I know there was something some things that work. So I think it'd be useful to have people to know what's on the market.
Sure.
What is the
Emerging kind of trends, yeah.
Temptations.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting when we get our survey data back from Chatham and Madison. We saw a decrease from 2017 to 2021, it increased from 2017 to 19, but then came back down in 2021. We're getting reports though from both schools that it is on the rise again. So it'll be interesting to look at that 30-day past use data to see kind of where we stand. But I agree, an update on just that trend in particular would be good for the summer. So, all right, thank you all so much. We will see you hopefully in June.
Thank you, Allison.
Thanks, Allison.
In June, you'll see me on the screen.
Okay.
I think I'm here today.